Good morning. Just got up to Fort Lauderdale Beach. It is a windy ass morning. Probably shouldn't say ass, but it's a windy morning today, and we're gonna try to get some sunrise shots. Wow. So normally all this sand is nowhere near this high, but the wind's been blowing for a couple days. This is kind of cool though. This is crazy. It is super windy today. I have high doubts any of the audio is actually gonna work, but we're gonna test it out. So I have a little mic here, and it's just one of these Zoom pocket mics. So this is also, you can see this is an app I use on how I figure out where the sun comes up. So what it does is it shows you in real time the path that the sun will be taking throughout the day. So what I think I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna go get the tripod real quick, and then we'll go down over by kind of the lifeguards over here, lifeguard stand, and try to get some photos there. As I'm getting set up, there's a couple things I'm looking at. As you can see on the screen here, I have a grid set up. Grid essentially, the grid essentially just lets me kind of frame my photo up. Using the kind of rule of thirds, I want the photo to be balanced nicely. You see I have a subject over here. The sun ideally is gonna pop up over on this side. Everything looks super black on the screen right now, and I'm mainly exposed just for the sky. That's a huge aspect when shooting sunrise, because if you blow out your sky, you're not gonna be able to get the detail you want in the clouds. And that's what most people are drawn to, is like the sky looking so amazing. But what you can do is, since I am shooting in RAW, make sure you're 100% shooting in RAW, you can bring up the shadows, and I'll show you in post-production in the Lightroom how you can do that, and how kind of amazing it is when you do shoot in RAW with this good, decent camera, how much you can alter the image, I guess you'd say. So we're starting to get the sun peeking up there, and I'm actually gonna even try to punch in a little bit, see what a shot like that might look like. So look, see this person coming too? This is kind of always good. So just wait till she gets in the right spot. Fire off a couple shots. So you'll see now when we review this, see how she's like a little blurred and in motion? That's because we're shooting at that slower shutter speed. You're letting the light come in over a longer period of time, so that's what's gonna add just a little bit of blur. So the other important thing and reason to get here early is because if you're getting here as the sun's coming up, you're gonna be scrambling to find what actually looks best. Always wanna be set up, 15, 20, 30 minutes before the sunrise, so that you can move around and figure out your best positioning. That's super important. There's not a lot going on this morning. It's windy, the water looks bad. There's very, very little color in the sky. When you look around, only a couple clouds are even being lit up top. The sun's coming up, you can see, so we're still gonna shoot. We're still gonna capture everything we can. The good thing is, with Lightroom, you can add a little bit. I like to keep my photos as natural as possible. Obviously, want to capture the best. And there's only so much you can do. Just firing off different. I'm zooming in a little bit, I'm zooming out. So the only other thing I'm thinking is we can move over this way and really punch in more with the lifeguard stand there. So now you can see my sky is starting to get a little blown out. So I'm just gonna drop, bring the shutter speed so it's letting in essentially less light right now. So we're gonna hang out. Looks like the sun's gonna disappear behind that cloud there. But what could happen is as it gets higher, there might be pockets where the sun kind of can come through, and they call it God rays basically. You'll get these light rays poking through all the clouds. So we're gonna hang out another 10, 15 minutes or so, try to see if that happens. But you can also see now they're starting to get some light into these clouds here. So now I'm wondering how we might be able to capture, the details in these other clouds. If I come wider, kind of angle up, I can get the highlights in these clouds now. Or what I can do is I actually have a wide lens. I can throw the wide lens on it. Now you can see I have a much different kind of view. Even all the way zoomed in, that's on this lens, that's zoomed in on this. What you do is move up. Usually you want your subjects to be at one of these 4 points. 1, 2, 3, or 4. If this lifeguard stand is going to be my subject, but I also have the sun, that's where you're trying to find the right, so right here it's kind of balanced. Kind of get a little bit of both in there. You even get a silhouette from that guy. And you're getting the clouds. I'm actually going to do the same thing I did before, just close the aperture all the way down so I can let more in with this. And then I'm going to pan up just a little bit to try to get some of these other clouds. So we're starting to see these are starting to light up now over on this end. So once again, let's move over this way. Try to figure out, and then we can try to figure out how we can get both kind of in there. This is actually pretty cool. So what I'm seeing here is the lifeguard stand and this railway are kind of like nice leading lines into the sunrise over there, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to readjust. See, I don't like that as much. I like the silhouette really of this against the sky. We're back this way. All right, so there again, I just adjusted. That railway is still kind of leading to the sun. See, it's starting to get kind of white in here. That's what I'm seeing, and that kind of looks like it's starting to get blown out. So I'm just going to adjust the shutter speed a little bit less, or a little bit faster, I guess I should say, just so nothing's blown out. The whole foreground, I guess you'd say, the lifeguard stand, the sand is very dark. I'm still exposing just for the sky. And you see the sun, you're starting to get these rays kind of blast through, which is cool. So what I want to do now, I think we got enough good photos to basically be able to go into Lightroom and check out the whole post-production process. So let's go back to the studio, hop on the computer, hop on Lightroom, and go through that whole workflow. Hey guys, so we are back in the studio. I'm going to take you through Lightroom and show you basically how I edit the majority of all my photos. I do have the project set up. If you have not set up the project yet and are unfamiliar with how to do that, I do have another video. Be sure to check that out in the description. And that will basically teach you how I set my projects up to keep everything organized, which is incredibly important and something I've kind of developed over the years. And I'm basically gonna run through and show you how I select the photos that I want to fully edit, how I edit them, and just make it super easy to pump out content as quickly as possible, essentially. So now we're gonna run through the photos and basically find the best photos that we wanna edit fully. During this process, essentially you're just scrubbing through the timeline, and what you're looking for are photos that really stand out. Initially these photos I'm looking at, it looks kind of gray, the sun's not peeking out too much, and overall it's just kind of underwhelming. But still, I know later on when the sun started to really pop up and you started to get some of those highlights in the clouds, those were some of our best photos. And that's why I like to edit photos relatively soon after I go out to shoot. It's because it's fresh in your memory. You already know what photos kind of are gonna come out best. Looking at these, I know I have better photos in the collection from that morning. So I'm just gonna keep scrubbing through until we get to some of those. And as you can see, just all of these are underwhelming. What you can do though, is if you see a photo that you want to see how it might come out. Say this photo, you're saying, oh, okay, the sun kind of looks cool in this one compared to the rest. What I do is I do a quick edit. I turn the highlights all the way down. I turn your shadows all the way up. I press Option and drag the whites to the right until I start to see the whites. And what's it's essentially showing you is all the white areas would be what is blown out now in the photo. So if I turned it all the way up, you see how all this area, you lose all that detail in the sky. However, if I adjust it so only that little bit right there is blown out, you have the details, you have the other little wispiness from the clouds up there, and you don't lose any of that. And you do the same with black. So you're gonna hold Option and then click and drag to the left. With the blacks, I like it to just be seen a little bit, and that's where you're gonna be properly balanced in terms of your whites and blacks. For clarity, I always turn it up to about 20. Vibrance, I always turn it up to about 20. Contrast, you know, somewhere between 15 to 20. And here you go. You know, this is a very rough edit. If I wanted to see how the before and after looked, you can hit the backslash key that's right above the return on your Mac. And so this is edited, unedited. So these are some of the ones here that I really liked. And what I'm seeing is, you know, you have the light in the clouds up top, you have the sun piercing through, you have the lifeguard station that the railing's kind of leading down into the sun. So it's giving you kind of like a leading line there. And once again, I'm gonna do the same thing I did with the other photos. I'll go highlights all the way down, shadows all the way up. I'm gonna hold Option, drag my whites. I'm gonna hold Option, drag my blacks. And you see on this one, pretty much your blacks are already there right off the rip, so you don't really need to do much. I can turn my clarity up to about 20, my vibrance up to about 20, contrast kind of in there. And one other thing I always like to do is I add a little vignette to kind of draw your eye in. Nothing major, it will just kind of make you focus more on the center of the photo. So this is my rough edit for relatively everything. As you can see on the bottom of the timeline here, all of these photos are relatively the same. The sky is exposed properly and the bottom is all dark. So what you can actually do is take the photo you edited. Here we go. And I'm actually gonna hit P just to mark that for myself. And then I'm gonna hit Command C to copy what I've done to this photo. And then I can paste it onto any of these other photos to make it go a little quicker. So you see this is still pretty dark. It looks like the whites need to come up a little bit more. And the exposure might even need to come up a little bit more. But by just pasting the attributes in there, you're gonna save a lot of time from having to manually set each one of these sliders. And the main goal here is I'm looking for the photos that are really catching my eye. You know, maybe there's a flock of birds that's flying by in one. Maybe the light rays look really good in one. I'm just going through to really just narrow in on a selection of photos that I really want to take to the next level. So this one looks pretty good. I like this. I also really like this shot because the sun rays you see really well. So I'm going to take this photo and actually edit. First thing I'm going to do is adjust the crop a little bit. Just kind of bring in that side to balance the photo out a little more. Next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit the mask tool here. Actually, I'm gonna hit this brush tool and I'm gonna select that because I want that cone gone. So now the cone is actually deleted. And this you can do for relatively anything. Say I really didn't like those clouds, you can kind of paint over it and it will use the content aware tool to adjust that. So I'm gonna leave those because I do like them. And the next thing I'm really noticing is this sand is a little bit darker than I would like. So this is called your gradient tool. And I'm gonna click and drag so just the sand is covered. And I need to adjust these here. But what you can do now is see how only the bottom is getting brightened or darkened. And this is just one method of being able to adjust something like that. Another method is you can use this over here. It's called the brush tool, where you can actually paint over a subject and then make your adjustments that way. Once again, I need to reset this. But see, when I turn the exposure up, it is just now affecting the tower, and I can make the tower stand out a little more, or a lot more if I want. I think it's gonna go kind of like right there. So let's say when you are painting, you make a mistake and you do this, right? and you need to adjust that. What you're gonna wanna do is hit the Option key, and you can go to erase it. Sometimes you might not be able to, because what's actually happening is when you hit Option, if you see the flow and feather and size down here, so if I turn this flow all the way down and I go to delete, relatively nothing's happening. So I need to make sure that when the Option key is held down, my flow is up, and that will let you eliminate that. And it's the same thing when you're painting normally. If your flow is all the way to 100, you're gonna have a direct line. If your flow is only at 50%, say, it's only gonna be 50%, and so on. You know, here's like 25%, it's barely there. So I'm gonna hit Option again, flow at 100, because I just wanna delete all of that. And I'm gonna eliminate that. I'm gonna put that back. I can see how the tower looks. It looks pretty good. Okay, and say after you do your brush or your gradient filter, you don't like it, you need to change it, whatever it may be. So what you're gonna do is click on the brush tool here, and then you see this point. So wherever you do your first brush stroke, there's gonna be a edit pin, essentially. So you're gonna wanna click on the edit pin, and that's gonna bring up this mask. And now you can see, you can make changes just to that edit. And it's the same thing with the gradient filter. You can click, you see an edit pin here. If you hold over, I'm not clicking anything right now, it's showing you what is being affected by this. And then you can just drag it up, drag it down. You know, I think it looks pretty good right there. So that's relatively how you do a sunset photo. There's other things you can do. You can come in, you can play with this HSL or the different colors. So let's say I really wanted there to be more of a yellow hue. I can add more yellow, or I can adjust the yellow in the actual photo. You see how the sunset is now a little bit darker. I can come in and change the saturation. Another thing I like to do sometimes is come in and mess with the highlights. So what I'll do is I'll click and drag this wheel to the far end, and I'll kind of just rotate around and see what looks good. So like right there looks good to me. And then I can scale it down a little bit if I need to. So right there, and it just kind of gives you a little, if you look at the history, it just gives you a little bit of a different hue to it. You know, and you can get crazy with it if you want. You can come over and add some pinks and purple and really kind of change the sky how you would like. One thing I like to do usually as well is just add maybe like 20% noise reduction. It just smooths the photo out a little bit more, especially because you're only exposing for the sky. And a lot of times when it is very dark, you will get some noise. This kind of helps clean it up a bunch. And then I went through highlight priority. If you need to, you can adjust the, let's see how, I can hit auto, and you can see that kind of straightened it out a little bit. The horizon's a little bit more level. You also have your curves that you can play with here if you want. There's a lot of fun things you can kind of do in ways you can alter your images over here. So you can see just how, you know, your highlights, these are your highlights, how you can adjust these images however you really would like. I'm gonna keep it how it was. So that's basically it. That's how we go through and we edit every photo. At the end, you're gonna wanna go to File, Export. You're always gonna wanna navigate to the folder where you intend to store the photo. Don't just start exporting to random places. Take the time to stay organized with this. It will save you so much time in the long run. So I'm gonna navigate to the folder where I have all these photos. And in that folder, I have an additional folder for edited photos that I'm gonna upload it to. So choose. You can create a subfolder category if you want. You can change the file name if you want. I always just export it as the same file name. I never really change it. If you want to limit the file size, you can do it. Say you know you're exporting photos for website design and you need to have lower res files, you can set that here. You can set metadata, you can set watermarking. There's a lot you can do in here. I'm just gonna export it as a standard file. So that's it. Basically, that is how I edit the majority of my photos in Lightroom. If you do have questions about how to use your DSLR, how to take sunrise photos, how to edit in Lightroom, definitely drop a comment below and let me know.
Would love to keep teaching you guys and providing valuable tutorials. Also, like this video if it helped. My goal is to just keep putting out these videos, and the more feedback I can get from you guys, the better I can make these videos in the long run. So drop a comment, do all that fun stuff, and be sure to subscribe for more videos. That's it, guys. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk soon.